My name is Caitlyn Au, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist from Portland, Oregon. Initially, I applied to laboratory with a proposal exploring nuclear power in the region and the legacy of atomic power. And I applied and then changed my proposal. It still kind of focuses on that topic of nuclear power, but I've expanded it quite a bit to include violence in maybe more forms than just physical violence. So the material and discursive conditions of violence is what I'm focusing on with these three works. Yeah, so the first project is a VR project, and it takes a model of the Patsy Clark mansion built in the late 1800s and kind of interposes it with the Yin Tang house, which is a Chinese house brought from Huizhou, China, and it was transplanted to Salem, Massachusetts. So these two structures, they both kind of have some complicated situations with authenticity. The Patsy Clark mansion is decorated in an Oriental style, which was very big in Europe in the late 1700s. And I guess it took a while to get to Spokane, but this trend was really popular in Spokane right before the turn of the century. So the architect was a really renowned architect in Spokane, and the family that commissioned the house was in the mining business. So they employed a lot of Chinese immigrants, and they were also building this house. And all of this was happening at the same time. There was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment among people in the region. So I've kind of taken this stance of creating a virtual space where these two structures can, interface in a way where they're kind of cultural equals instead of there being this like fantasy of the Orient serving a Western structure and there not being a real connection to the actual cultural origins of that style. So that's the VR project. And then the video it connects more directly to my initial idea for the whole show, and it kind of explores violence and the recontextualizing of violence in a more direct way. So it takes the text of Truman's announcement of the bomb being dropped on Hiroshima, and I've taken out all of the indexicals and even more than that. Indexicals being a linguistic object, they always point to other words or outside information, so they're always directed towards something else. And if you take that something else away, then there's no referent and no way to contextualize what you're talking about. So what ends up happening is the edited text in this video piece is very vague and like self-referential, and that's reflective of the conditions of secrecy at Hanford. I should back up. Hanford is a town not too far from here. Richland is the town. Hanford was the site where the B reactor was operational, and many of the people, actually most of the people who worked there didn't know what they were working on prior to this announcement by President Truman. So I just thought that was really interesting. I actually visited the plant, and they had labels for the equipment, and we were told that the operators who were actually handling the plutonium themselves didn't know what they were working with. They just knew it as metal. So there was a metal loader label, and then the nuclear pile itself they didn't call it a reactor or anything like that. They just called it olive. I don't know why they called it that. But everything, the naming system was kind of instrumental in keeping things secret. So that's kind of the background behind the process I used in editing the text. It's kind of like they were implicated in this act of war anyway, but in a way that they weren't aware of. But what's really weird about it to me, as an outsider, was how it's been framed now. So it's actually this, the development of the bomb is kind of like this achievement and source of pride for the town, and that's, very normal for the people there. And then coming there, it was just, to me, seeing it framed that way as, patriotic and innovative, ambitious is, well, to me, it's missing part of the context, which is that it is a weapon and it was used in a violent way towards people. So yeah, there is a kind of doubling of things happening there. So the third piece in the show is actually a group of objects, and they're cast concrete. So here I'm kind of formally exploring the same concepts that I was working with in the video piece and the VR project. You see a lot of the same considerations of space in the VR project as there are in these concrete objects. So I'm kind of working with these non-referential proportions and indentations and textures, and working with the idea that the industrial object has this authority that goes unquestioned because it's seen as functional. And that kind of loop of functionality and meaninglessness reinforcing one another, that we don't question things that are functional or perceived as necessary because they seem like they have their own justification. I think I've been working with objects in space and buildings for a while, and I've been looking for a way to morally contextualize those things because, it is a dimension that you have to deal with if you keep working with them, and probably anything. But I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so to know that that was so close and I hadn't really been aware of it was something really striking to me. And having talked to just a few people here about it too, I think it might not be so much in the daily consciousness of people living here. And it was kind of kept secret for so long and not talked about, that the legacy of Hanford is one that, I don't know, could be explored more in different ways. At this point, to say that I usually work in certain materials or media is kind of like I've just been out of school for 2 years. So I don't really have a go-to thing. I want to try new things at this point. But the virtual reality is definitely new. I've never really worked with computers, and so that was fun. Yeah, but otherwise I've done a lot of work in glass and with casting and video, simple video, so those things are more familiar. I think being able to conceive of everything as an exhibition beforehand was new and fun for me, and having all of that time to do research and then at the tail end of everything to execute it. So I guess I had around half a year to actually do all of this research and then put the show together. So that was not something I've done before. Usually I want to make things and test them in material really early on. Going forward, I think the work that I've done at this residency is going to clarify kind of in a logical way what I've been thinking about for a couple years. And if people are curious about my work, they can go to my website.